INFJ personalities often see others clearly, but miss themselves. The room is quiet. Someone sits across from you, speaking slowly about their life. You listen the way few people can listen. Your attention does not stay on the surface. Your mind quietly follows invisible threads beneath their words. Patterns appear. Motives form. Future possibilities unfold in silence. Your NI begins mapping a path they cannot yet see. At the same time, your FE softens the space between you. Your voice adjusts. Your presence becomes reassuring. They feel understood, almost guided. And somehow the conversation leaves them lighter than before. But later, when the room empties and the silence returns, something strange happens. The same clarity disappears. The mind that reads others with precision turns uncertain when it faces itself. You can sense everyone's direction, but your own life suddenly feels blurred. Some INFJs live with an unusually strong inner vision. Dominant NI, introverted intuition, constantly searches for patterns across time. It does not simply observe the present moment. It connects past signals, emotional undercurrents, and future trajectories. Your mind quietly asks, "Where is this going? What could this become?" Because of NI, you often sense potential before others do. You can look at a struggling person and perceive the stronger version of them hidden underneath. And your FE, extroverted feeling, naturally wants to protect that potential. FE stabilizes the emotional field. It supports growth, encourages harmony, maintains connection. Together, NI and FE create something powerful. You do not only see people, you see who they might become. This ability can feel almost prophetic, but prophecy carries a shadow. The problem rarely begins with naivety. It begins with hope. NI sees the arc of transformation. FE wants to nurture that arc into reality. So when someone behaves inconsistently, withdraws, or shows emotional distance, your mind begins filling the gap. NI explains the behavior through future growth. FE protects the relationship from conflict. The story becomes larger than the present moment, and slowly, reality becomes negotiable. This is where the archetype appears. The blind seer, someone who sees deeply, but not always clearly. You perceive emotional wounds others ignore. You sense potential where others see limitation. But sometimes you stop observing what is actually happening. Because the vision of who someone could be feels more real than who they are today. Your SE, extroverted sensing, lives in the background of the INFJ mind. SE is responsible for noticing immediate reality. Body language, tone shifts, small behavioral patterns. But SE is the inferior function. It speaks quietly. And when NI is projecting far into the future, SE can easily be ignored. The present moment becomes secondary. The vision becomes primary. This dynamic often unfolds without conscious awareness. A person cancels plans repeatedly. NI interprets it as temporary stress. FE avoids confrontation to preserve harmony. Your SE briefly notices the pattern. But the signal fades beneath the larger narrative. You remain loyal to the potential version of the person, even when their present actions quietly contradict it. You didn't notice when it started. You thought you were being patient. But patience slowly became waiting. Waiting for someone to grow into the version of them your intuition already believed in. You saw the future version, but you stopped measuring the present one. INFJs often believe that deep understanding can stabilize a relationship, and understanding does matter. But relationships also depend on behavior, consistency, effort, presence. Understanding someone's wounds does not change their actions, and actions still define reality. When NI and FE dominate without grounding, a subtle distortion appears. NI keeps projecting forward, FE keeps protecting the bond, and SE, the function responsible for noticing reality, becomes quieter and quieter. This is not emotional blindness. It is intuitive overextension. Your mind is simply looking too far ahead. There is another function involved here as well. Your TI, introverted thinking. TI lives quietly in the INFJ's internal structure. It analyzes contradictions, tests assumptions, searches for logical coherence. But TI often activates later in emotional dynamics, especially when the relationship already carries meaning. So inconsistencies remain unchallenged for longer than they should. NI believes the future will correct the pattern. FE protects the emotional connection. SE notices reality but struggles to assert itself. TI remains patient until something begins to fracture. The emotional pivot rarely arrives all at once. It appears through subtle exhaustion. You feel strangely drained after interactions that once energized you. Your intuition begins hesitating. The story no longer flows as smoothly. Small contradictions accumulate. TI finally starts asking questions internally. The pattern is not evolving, it is repeating. You thought you were protecting the connection, but the connection was quietly dissolving. You believed your understanding could hold the bond together, but understanding cannot replace reciprocity, and reciprocity always reveals itself through action. Reality moves differently from intuition. NI leaps across time. Reality repeats small signals. Who reaches out? Who keeps promises? Who shows up? These patterns are the language of SE. And when SE is ignored for too long, the mind begins living inside interpretation rather than observation. Returning to clarity does not require abandoning intuition. It requires balance. NI still sees the future. FE still nurtures connection. But SE must return to the room. SE watches what actually happens, not what might happen later. And TI quietly organizes the evidence. Together, the four functions create a more stable perception. Vision anchored in reality. Empathy supported by discernment. Understanding balanced by observation. For many INFJs, this shift feels uncomfortable at first, because the mind must release certain imagined futures. Not every potential path will unfold. Not every person you understand will grow in the direction you sensed. Understanding someone does not guarantee the journey continues together. And accepting this can feel like losing a world you had already visited in your mind. But something important returns. Self-perception. For a long time, your intuition looked outward, reading others, guiding others, protecting others. Now, NI begins turning inward. SE notices your own emotional signals. TI analyzes your limits. FE finally includes you in the circle of care. You begin to see something that was always present. Your intuition was never meant to ignore reality. It was meant to illuminate it. NI provides direction. FE sustains connection. SE anchors awareness in the present moment. TI protects clarity. When one dominates completely, vision becomes distortion. When they work together, perception becomes precise, and the archetype slowly changes. The blind seer does not lose their gift. They simply learn to open their eyes while using it. The future remains visible, but the present is no longer invisible. Some INFJs will recognize this moment instantly. Others will feel it only as a subtle shift, a quiet recalibration of attention, not a collapse of intuition, just a return of balance. Because true vision does not escape the present moment, it grows from it. And sometimes the clearest sight appears, not when the mind looks further ahead, but when all four functions finally pause, long enough to observe what is already here.